So let me start with a story. And it's a typical story, not about a particular patient, but about a group of patients. And it usually goes like this. Someone shows up in the office. They've been sent by their doctor. Their blood sugars are out of control. They're recently diagnosed with diabetes. They may have been diabetic for years. But they show up and they look the same. Their heads may be hung. They're frustrated. They're angry. They don't want to be here. They're scared. Sometimes they say it. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it is not verbalized. It's just in the way they sit. It's in their response to the questions I ask. Sometimes after a long pause, the question comes, what's now? What's next? But almost always there's emotion in the room. Like I said, fear, confusion, and usually a little bit of frustration because the number that they're looking at on that lab report is something like this. It's a 9.1. It's a 9.2. It's a 7.8. It's a 14. Now, sometimes this patient really has been working at this. Sometimes they've been trying, but they really don't understand. Either way, when people see the number, they often begin asking the same questions. One, did I damage something? Is this how complications start? Is this what's going on? Is this the rest of my life? What did I do wrong? And most importantly, what happens now? And so what we want to do is we're going to walk through that situation together, because instead of reacting to the emotions of that number, we want to see the thought process, the way we go through the evaluation and make the decisions. Hey, if you're new to me, I'm Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Woode with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, go to the next level. We're creating the life we've always wanted. I'm here because I want you to have the same success in your health like you're having in all the other areas of your life, so you can show up intentionally and consistently for the people and for the events that are so important. You don't need superhuman strength. What you need is a strategy you can trust, a plan you can follow, and the support to show up every single time. And welcome, whatever platform you're joining us from, whether that's Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitch or Instagram, of course, here on YouTube. We are so glad that you're here. And a special shout out to our accelerator members and whatever city, state, country that you're in. I'm so glad you're here. If you're new, go ahead and put new in the comments, because I want to give you a hand clap and some music and let you know that we are indeed glad that you are here, that you're hanging out with us in this space together. Over the last several weeks, we have been doing our Foundations episodes, and I hope that you've been watching those and going back. And this is really designed to give you an on-ramp, if you will, right? So for people who have been diabetic for a while and there's still things that don't quite make sense, people who are newly diagnosed and you want to know, okay, how do I make the best choices for my health? This is the space for you right here, right now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump over and we're going to take a look at a few things. I want to, of course, as we always do, take a look at some numbers, and I've got some numbers that I'm going to show you here in just a minute as we take a look at my blood sugars, and you'll see right below me there, well, you may see me right there. That is my Dexcom Clarity Report from my Dexcom. What we're going to look at, though, is we're going to take a look at my monitors. So right in front of me, I've got my Freestyle Libre. I don't have a Dexcom on right now because it went out. And over to my side, I have my my Keto Mojo, and we'll take a look at those too. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's first take a look at my Freestyle Libre. This is my Freestyle Libre CGM, continuous glucose monitor, and there is my blood sugar 123. You'll see that there. That's what it is right at this moment. You'll see that spike. That was as I was leaving work. I had close to leaving work. I had some chips. I won't tell you what kind of chips that I had. And you'll see that spike that went up right there and then coming back down now to 123. If I look at the reports on this thing, there's two reports I love to look at. One is my time and range. And whenever I look at my time and range, I always want to go to the 90-day version because that tells me what my average blood sugar, or how much time I'm in for the last 90 days, right? And I've been in the range 97% of the time with some lows down there at the bottom. You see it says 2%, and that usually happens when I'm fasting, okay? And then getting out of that report and jumping over and looking at my daily, let's see, where am I? Looking at my average glucose, once again, 90 days, and you see that's the number right about here. So 101 is my 90-day average. Down below, you'll see this broken out according to the different days, different times of the day, and I can look at that number. I love that part of the graph because it allows me to make some decisions about what I do during the day, okay? I love data, and so the data allows me to say, okay, I want to exercise. I don't want to exercise. I want to eat. I want whatever I'm doing. This gives me some insight into how I can make choices to improve that number. Okay, so that's how that works. And then the other one I want to do is I'm going to go down here to my glucose management indicator. I'm going to go for 90 days. And so the glucose management indicator is a surrogate, if you will, for the A1C. I can't call it an A1C because it's a calculated number. But if I were to get an A1C, I would expect it to approximate this number that you're seeing there on the screen, okay? And I have labs that are coming up here in just another week or so, and so we'll be able to see what my actual blood sugars are compared to what my A1C is. So, right, we'll see whether this thing is accurate or not, how far off it is. Okay. All right. And then let's get out of that. And I want to go over, I want to take a look at this is my Keto Mojo. I don't have my Contour with me today, but my Keto Mojo is a glucose monitor that gives me both a ketone and it also gives me glucose. So let's get into my handy dandy container. Well, I have the meter, but I don't have strips, I guess I should say. And here is a blue one for ketones, and then here is a brown one for blood sugar. And then get that back in there, and here is my Lancet. As you know, I don't use a Lansing device. I just grab this thing. Actually, let me get this first. So we're going to open this up. Get this strip into the glucometer. And right there. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and open this one up just so I can have it off to the side. And this is my ketone. And so I've not been fasting since last week. Okay, so we ended our fast. We were traveling, and so we ended our fast. What day did we end? But anyway, since last week, I have not been fasting. So I simply open this up and find a finger, and I've been picking on this one, so let's go ahead and keep doing that. And ow, 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 ow. Okay, and a pretty good drop. Get that on here. Okay, and I'm going to keep this going because I need to grab another drop. I'm going to leave this up on the screen so we can see what it is. Well, let's do it this way. Okay, so 126 is what the Keto Mojo says. My blood sugar right now, according to the Libre, is 124, so pretty close. And then let's get this out and grab a ketone strip. And what do you think my ketones are going to be if you're out there? Go ahead and drop in what do you think it is. All right, I think I know what I'm expecting it to be at least. All right, and let's go ahead and get that drop on. Okay, and there we are. And 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and 0.2. Okay, so remember when we talk about ketones that are less than 0.5 are considered normal. 0.5 to 1.5 considered nutritional ketosis, and then above 1.5 considered therapeutic ketosis. So as we are talking about ketones, and we talk about that specifically when we're fasting or we want to get into ketosis, weight loss, and those types of things, we want it to be at least 0.5 or higher. Okay, and so there we are. All right, and so that's what we have right now. And you saw from this, it was 126 for the blood sugar, and then on the screen 123 is what my keto my freestyle livre was. So pretty close to one another. And so let's go ahead now and let's hop over and let's say hello to some of our community members. I see you out there, so let's do this. And actually, we're going to come back to this one. I think that's the one I've been using. All right, so I see, let's see, I see Jennifer out there. Hey, Jennifer, how are you? Jennifer says, howdy all. What's up? Coming through and hanging out with us, Jennifer. Thank you for being here. And Teresa says, hey, Doctor and Jennifer. Hey, Teresa, what's going on? Thank you for being here with us. I see Steve. Steve says, hello, friends. Steve, thank you for being here. I'm always amazed at the community that we have because you guys have done such amazing jobs in terms of metabolism. And I'll make a point about that later in the show, but just very proud of our community members. Teresa says, hey, Steve. Teresa's guessing 0.5 is what she thought the ketones were going to be. And remember, because I'm not fasting, right, I expect them to be normal, so 0.1 to 0.5-ish. And it was actually 0.2. Steve was guessing 0.2. And then Cornelia, what's going on, Cornelia? Cornelia says, hello, everyone. Hey, Cornelia, thank you for coming through. And the Lightworks, what is going on? Good evening. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. We are so excited that you're here. Haven't seen you a little bit, but are glad that you are in this space hanging out with us right now, okay? All right, so let's go ahead, y'all, and let's hop into our discussion for this evening because it is a very important one. And before I get there, let me once again remind everybody that the foundation episodes are out there. So make sure that you're watching those because they're very interesting. They're designed to be very accessible and approachable, not a lot of jargon in them. So that you can look at those and you yourself can help to understand what's going on in your body, and you can point other people to them because they're simple. They were considered kind of an on-ramp, if you will, for people who are in the metabolic space. Now, let me say this quickly. If you are not diabetic, that does not mean that these don't apply to you. Okay, so pre-diabetes, people who have metabolic syndrome, all of those, the things that we talk about, very much are in line and keeping with what we want you to do as well. So let's go ahead and let's hop over and let's get into our discussion. All right, so patient comes in and they're sitting in front of me and they are frustrated. They're scared. They don't want to be there. They're looking at this piece of paper with that number on it, or they've been told a number. Sometimes they don't even realize why they're in the office, right? Because their doctor called, made the appointment. We called them, we got them on the schedule, and they show up. And the first thing I do is when I walk into the room, I say, hey, good morning. What's going on? I'm Dr. Woode. And if it's a new patient, what brings you to see me today? How can I help you? And I get one of maybe 3 different answers. Like, I don't know. My doctor sent me over. Or I'm not sure I want to be here. I'm not able to control this blood sugar. Or there's silence. Okay? So let's take a look and let's kind of walk through a typical patient presentation together. And so the question is, blood sugars are still high. And once again, this is not, this is for a patient who is currently diagnosed with diabetes, They were just recently, like yesterday, or day before yesterday. We get patients who are coming through and they just came straight from the hospital, right? Newly diagnosed. Or someone who's been diagnosed for years and they have not been able to control their blood sugars, and here they are. Or someone who has been controlled and something has happened and now they're showing up with blood sugars that are not where they want them to be. Okay, so any of those patients, this will fit right in with that. Okay, so first of all, I want us to understand a little bit about A1C. So the A1C is a marker of what your average blood sugar is. I tell people kind of thinking about A1C as kind of a report card. So my son is in school and they get these marking things that come home, right? And so it is a representation of what's been going on over the last several months. And just like that, the A1C fits in that space. It is a representation of what the average blood sugar is. And there's a formula that you can use to calculate it. We won't go through all of that right now, but it reflects the average blood sugar roughly over 3 months. Your cells live anywhere from 90 to 120 days, which is why when you go to your doctor, they say, hey, we're getting your A1C and we can't get it next week because we just got it this week. We have to wait 3 months, so about roughly 3 months, right? So it's not describing a bad weekend or a holiday meal. So your A1C today doesn't tell me what your blood sugar was this morning. So people will say, oh, my A1C is high because I had Pop-Tarts for breakfast. No, it doesn't. That Pop-Tart from this morning is not represented in this A1C right now. The A1C is an average of what's been going on over 3 months. And it describes months of elevated glucose. Now, why are we interested in the A1C? Why are we interested in improving blood sugar? That's an interesting one because we're interested in that because as we get better numbers, we're able to prevent complications. I want you to remember that word. So complications. If you could have an A1C or blood sugars of 300, 400, 500 and it not cause damage, nobody would care. Let me say that again. If you could live with an A1C of 12, 13, 14, 7.5, and there was no damage being done, nobody would care what it was because then it's not an issue. But the reason we care is because we're not able to prevent damage if the blood sugars are high. And the more they're high and the longer they're high, the more damage that's being done. And so our goal is to prevent that. And specifically, when we talk about complications, there are several things that we want to talk about. Eyes, kidneys, and nerves. Eyes, kidneys, nerves. The retinopathy, the nephropathy, and the neuropathy. Those are the primary things that we talk about. And we talk about those because those are typically the places where an elevated blood sugar causes damage first. And it's usually because it's in the small blood vessels. So there are several kinds of blood vessels in the body. There are large ones, like your aorta and your vena cava, like the big trunks. And then there are the very small vessels, which are the vessels that take blood to the organs. Very small ones they're supplying. Okay? So think about at your house, there's a water line that comes to the house. That's the big one. It comes down the street, right, from the water company, and it comes into your neighborhood, and then it breaks off from that trunk into the different houses. So the big vessels are the ones that are bringing water into your neighborhood, and the small vessels are the ones that are taking water to your house and your neighbor's house and so forth. Okay, and typically what we do is we see damage in the small vessels first. Notice I say first. Eventually, they can get to others, but we see them in the small vessels. And so when we're talking about the control, we're actually looking at those, vessels, right? So eyes, kidneys, nerves, and specifically we're looking at blood vessels. So we want to control, we want to be able to manage the things that are going on in the body, because if we don't do that, then we are ending up with damage, okay? So according to what we have learned, what we want to do is we want to keep blood sugars within a certain parameter. And I'm putting some up on the screen. Now, these are general parameters. When I talk to my patients in the office, I actually give them smaller parameters. Okay? So fasting blood sugars, and typically you'll say this, hey, we want fasting blood sugars to be anywhere from 70 to about 180. That's when you wake up in the morning. For your post-meal blood sugars, anywhere between, we want them less than 2 hours after you eat. We want them less than 200. Okay, so 2 hours. So we give them smaller, more stringent, tighter control. Just because we say, hey, you can have a blood sugar of 170, doesn't mean that that's where we want you to go, because that is still causing damage. Okay, So just some numbers. Well, how do we go about managing and taking care of the things that we see when we are evaluating patients? And there's 3 basic things that we want to do. Number 1, we want to define the problem. Define the problem. We want to interpret the physiology behind the problem. And then we want to decide what to do next. What's the problem? What is the issue that's driving the problem? And then what do we do next as we are dealing with that particular patient? Okay? All right, so let's look at a particular patient. And here it is. Typical patient. This could be you. This could be your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad. Whoever it is, here's the patient. This is a 56-year-old male who has type 2 diabetes, and they've been having type 2 diabetes for 7 years. Okay, so typical. Their BMI, body mass index, is 33 with a weight of 232. And, we want a BMI of 25 or better is what we shoot for. Patient is a truck driver and has a sedentary lifestyle. That's their job, okay? So recent changes, they started walking about 20 minutes daily. This is a positive step forward, right? Because that helps. And they are coming because their A1C is a 9.1. 9.1. And that gives us an average blood sugar of 200, 215-ish. Okay? There are some calculations that you could do that's more precise, but that's an average of it. And when we look at some of the other labs, and you see some of those there, they're creatinine, and these are markers, these are lab results that we get whenever we're screening there. And let me do that. Let me say that really quickly. So when we're doing lab work, when we are screening, there are several things that we get, not because it is a problem, but because we're looking to make sure that we don't see damage. So when I tell my patients, hey, I want you to go down to the lab, there are certain things that we get, and we'll talk more about what some of those are. But what you're seeing now is this is some of the results that we see there. So creatinine is a 1.1. We've got the EGFR, which is 78. We've got the microalbumin, which is 42. So these are numbers that are specifically targeted at looking at the kidney. So there are 3 numbers that we look at when we look at the kidney. We look at the microalbumin, we look at the GFR, and we look at the creatinine, those 3. And so whenever I look at a patient, if I see an abnormality in one of those, then we'll go back and we'll check it to make sure that there's no issue there. If I see 2 or 3 of those, then that's a referral that goes to the nephrologist. That's the kidney doctor. Now we'll still, get more labs just to make sure that, if it's urgent, we've got to get them in right now. But if we are seeing more than one of those numbers that are abnormal, or they're rising, or they're persistent, or right, we note that that's an issue. Now, you may go to the nephrologist, and this is a good point for me to make here. You may go to the nephrologist, and the nephrologist looks at the number and say, hey, come back to see me in 6 months. Or, hey, this number is elevated, it's not in range, but there's nothing we've got to do right now. Come back in a year. That's the nephrologist's job, is to evaluate this and to see how critical it is that we do something right now. So just because your doctor sends you to the nephrologist and the nephrologist then says, hey, come back in a year, doesn't mean there's nothing wrong. It just means that the nephrologist has evaluated and determined that right now it's not urgent that we do anything. Okay? All right. So that's those are the numbers there. The other things that we look at cholesterol. Fasting lipids, we look at total cholesterol, we look at your LDL, that's the bad cholesterol, we look at your HDL, which is the good cholesterol, and we look at the triglycerides. So those are the four that we look at. And there are lots of different things that people will talk about. This is not designed to go through those labs, but those are labs that we do get as we are taking care of patients. Okay? And so we've already talked about the ADA targets. And then let's go ahead and let's take a look at the vitals for this patient. Remember, this is our truck driver, and blood pressure 142 over 88, heart rate is 78, weight 232, BMI 33, and we talked about that. So if this person, and just so that you know how that BMI correlates. So if I want a BMI of 25 for this patient, I've got to go down by what, 8? Did I do that right? Yeah. I got to go down by 8 BMI points. Okay? So for men, each BMI point is 6 pounds. And so for women, each BMI point is 5 pounds. So let's go and let's do this for a woman. If this was a woman and we needed to go from a 32 down to a 25, that's 8 BMI points. So 8 times 5, right, 40. Right, so 40 pounds that they would have to change to get down to a BMI. And then this patient is on some medications. They're currently on some metformin, which is a biguanide, and everybody probably has heard of metformin. They're on lisinopril, they're on atorvastatin, they're on aspirin. Now, I have those particular ones there, not because those are the best medications in those categories, but they are just representative of the category. And this patient happened to be on those, right? So you may see instead of lisinopril, they're on Acupril or Quinapril or something else. In terms of atorvastatin, which is a statin, they may be on simvastatin or rosuvastatin or pituvastatin, right? They could be on a different one. Or, well, aspirin is just aspirin, okay? But yeah, so this patient happens to be on those medications. And then in terms of presentation, patient is presenting with fatigue. And can anybody tell why a patient who has high blood sugar can be fatigued? Well, you're fatigued because the body is interpreting, well, I shouldn't say interpreting. Your body does not have the ability to use the energy that's floating around in your blood. Because remember, energy in the body is called sugar, glucose. Well, if the glucose is outside the cell floating around, the body can't use it, and so the fatigue comes as a result of not being able to have the energy. And so if the body's fatigued, it needs energy. What do you think the body makes you do? We'll come to that in just a minute. Okay, so they're fatigued in the afternoon, polyuria, so frequent urination, and that happens because the body's trying to get rid of sugar, and wherever sugar goes, water goes. Or water takes the sugar out. And so people pee a lot to get up at night. Nocturia means that peeing at night, 1 to 2 times per night. A lot of times people get up a lot more frequently. And that causes issues for what? For rest. So they're already fatigued, and now they're getting up to pee, and they're even more fatigued. Okay. Increased thirst, so polydipsia. Right. So we already talked about polyuria because they're peeing a lot. Now they're losing fluids, and because they're losing fluids, the body makes them drink more. That's called polydipsia, right? They get blurry vision because the blood sugars are elevated, and the blood sugars affect the vision. Slow healing. So they get a cut and it doesn't heal right away. All of those are things that go along with the high blood sugar. Now, one thing that I want to make here. So we talked about the polyuria, which is the peeing a lot. We talked about the polydipsia, which is the drinking a lot. There's another poly that I want to talk about, and it's called polyphagia, means eating a lot. And this is the one I was saying. If your body is needing energy and it does not have the ability to use the energy that's there, what do you think it makes you do? It makes you eat to get energy, which is a vicious cycle, right? Because you're eating to get energy. You're eating to get energy, but the energy is not working because what? Because it's not getting into the cell. Yeah. And so someone is constantly eating, but the body's not able to use that energy. And so it continues to make you eat, continue to make you pee, right? So there's this whole process that's going on. So that's how patients typically will show up when they're coming to see us, particularly those who have been either newly diagnosed or they're out of control, so on and so forth. Okay? All right. And so let's go back and let's take a look at some of the other risk factors and parts of this patient's history. So diet patterns. So patient eats lunch. Lunch is usually sandwich and chips. Dinner is a large meal, usually at 8:30 to 9. Occasionally a late night snacking, right? They're walking, and we just said that they started walking recently, right? So, yay, we love that. Previously, they were sedentary, meaning they didn't move. Other than like typical getting up and going to the bathroom, getting up, maybe going to the truck, maybe getting up and doing something around the house, they did not have an active lifestyle. Sleep, 5 to 6 hours. Stress is moderate because the work is very demanding. Both of those will worsen insulin resistance. And the father has type 2 diabetes, and the patient's mother has hypertension. Okay, so this is our patient that we're walking through. Okay, on our physical exam, patient has central adiposity, meaning that they are big around the middle, right? Raise your hand. I'm putting my hand up, right? So that's the part right there. And you know what's frustrating? That every other part of your body, if you're losing weight, every other part of your body gets better. That is the last thing. So people will say to me, how do I get rid of that? How do I get rid of this part of the body? And I've got to say to them that that's not going until the rest of your body loses weight. That's the last thing that goes. Those muscles are under there. They're just hidden. Okay, so central adiposity. Acanthosis nigricans. This is a darkening of the back of the neck. Maybe somebody will have some skin tags, darkening under the arms, right? And the axilla. Their foot exam, they don't have any ulcers, and when we test it for feeling, everything is good there. Neurologically, they have good sensation. So those are some positive signs because we're not seeing neurologic damage in this patient. Okay, so let's come back and let's talk a little bit. So that is how a patient presents. So when I walk into a room and I'm looking at this patient, all that data that we just went through is what's percolating through my head. That's what's on the sheet that I have. Or if the patient didn't come with labs, we get labs. And the things that I just went through are the things that we want to get. Because we are looking for where they are clinically in terms of symptoms. We're looking for where they are biochemically in terms of what diabetes is doing to their body, and we're looking to see what their past history is and what they're currently on. Okay? So all of that goes into the assessment of what do we do next, because ultimately that's the question. So what's the problem, right? So maybe we talk about define the problem, talk about the physiology, and then what's next? So what is the problem in this case? The problem in this case is the patient has elevated blood sugars. Right? At this point, we're not talking about why the blood sugars are high. We're not talking about what's currently causing the blood sugars. The blood sugars are elevated. They are significantly elevated. And we just said that we want to make sure that we are not causing damage. We want to minimize the damage that's being caused. And so our first goal, define the problem. The problem is the blood sugars are high. The A1C is high. We got to get it down. Now, I'm going to pause here because this is a great place for an interesting conversation. And I want you to follow me. If you have a house, if you have an apartment, if you have a car, if you have anything that you own that you care about, and it gets on fire, like there's a fire at your house, the apartment is on fire, there's a fire in the car, your coat is burning, you at that moment want the fire to be put out. I'm going to pause because I want that to make sense. If you have a house and the house is on fire, the decorator coming to you and saying, hey, I think we should put, blue wallpaper on that wall, and we should put some stucco over here, or we should put vaulted ceilings, you don't really care about the decoration of the house because the house is currently on fire. Hey, let's paint the car is not relevant because the car is on fire. I want that to make sense because we're going somewhere with that. So the first goal is not to beautify the car. It's not to decorate the house. It is to stop it from burning. So when someone walks in with an A1C of 9.1. As a matter of fact, when someone walks in with an A1C that's not controlled, and control, by the way, let me say that, is below 7. If someone walks in with an A1C that is not controlled, the very first plan is to stop the house from burning, decrease the damage that's being done by the high blood sugars. That's it. That's the current goal. That's the current plan. That's the current, what do we do next? Stop the house from burning. Okay, that's going to come back here in a minute. Because when we talk about the management of diabetes, okay, everyone thinks that the goal for that first visit is to get you to eat better. That the goal is to get you to sleep better. That the goal is to get you to go exercise. No, it's not. Are those good things? Great. Yes, we love that. We want you to eat better. We want you to have the best diet in the world. We want you to be running around the block. We want you to go to the gym. We want you to start lifting. We want you to start boxing. We want you to get the best sleep that you can ever get in your life. But that's not the goal for that first visit. The goal for the first visit is simply to stop the damage. And when do we stop the damage? We stop the damage right now. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about how blood sugars are regulated. So let's look at that. So glucose regulation depends on 3 processes. So 3 things that are going on in the body, and this is the majority of it. There are a couple other things that we're not going to talk about because they're so small, but these are the 3 major things that are regulating blood sugars. Number 1, glucose that comes in. Where do you think glucose comes from that comes in? It's called food. You cannot get glucose into the body other than through food, or if you are getting an IV, or somebody's giving you medication that's causing it. Those are the only way. That's the only way to get it into the body. So number 1, it comes into the body through food. Number two, you get glucose from the liver. The liver's job is to keep you alive when you're not eating. That's why there can be people who have been out in the wilderness. They were lost. They were on a boat. They got stranded somewhere. And you find them 3, 4, 5 days later and they're still alive. Why are they still alive? Because the body, the liver, is producing sugar for them so that they can keep energy up. Because we said that energy in the body is called what? It's called glucose. So it comes in by the food. The liver produces sugar, even though you may not be eating, but it's producing sugar. And then glucose is cleared. And the majority, the biggest, the most impressive thing in the body that uses sugar is called muscle. We eat it, we make it, and we burn it. 3 things. That's how sugar is used. Okay? And so when we talk about sugar, if we're going to affect the amount of sugar in your body, then we've got to look at those 3 things. Now, I'm going to pause for a second because I want to say this. And this is where you heard me say before that there are some other things that affect blood sugars. And I said that they weren't that big, but I'm gonna make a big deal of one of them. When your body is stressed, it will cause your blood sugars to go up. But where does the sugar come from when it gets elevated? The sugar comes from the liver, which is one of the 3 things we just talked about. Okay, which is why I said it's a big deal, but in the list of things, it is affecting something that we were already talking about. Does that make sense? So we eat it, the liver produces it, and we use it. 3 things. When there's stress will force the liver to produce sugar, and now the blood sugars are higher because of the stress. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so if we're going to affect blood sugar in the body, we've got to deal with one of those 3 things. And whenever we're talking about diabetes is a disconnect, a gap, if you will, between what the body's able to do, and what the sugar is. So if the body's able to do a blood sugar of 150 and it manages that, if you have a blood sugar of 151, then guess what? The body can't do that. That's the gap. That is diabetes. Because the body is struggling all the time to get better blood sugar. It's been doing that for a long time. In fact, we're told that by the time someone is diagnosed with diabetes, their blood sugars have been elevated for quite some time. And when I say elevated, it would have been elevated, except the body has been fixing it. Let me put it that way, right? And it's been doing that for a long time. So when blood sugars finally show up as elevated, that's not new to the body. It's new to you. But the body has already been dealing with it and keeping it normal. But the moment that the body's ability to keep the sugar normal is less than the weight of the sugar that is being brought in or being produced or being underused, diabetes shows up. Okay, so that gap is what we're talking about right there. Okay, so in, produced, and we use it. So if we're going to look at those, then we want to make sure that we're dealing with one of those particular things. Now, let me do this, and I'm going to talk about several ways now of dealing with that. The first one I'm going to talk about medication, because we want to talk about that and get that out of the way. So medication is a primary way of dealing with blood sugar. going to say it. I'm going to pause right there. I'm going to just pause and stop. Because, remember that house that we said that was on fire? Or the car that was on fire? Or the clothes or the belongings that you have that's on fire? When somebody shows up to fix it, to stop the fire, you tell them, do whatever it takes. You don't say to them, look, I don't want you to put all that water on my house. You said, whatever water you need to put on that house to get it to go out, that's what I need you to do. And that's what medication is. Medication is the water that we pour in the house. You walk in with an A1C of 9.1, guess what? You're getting a lot of water. You walk in with an A1C of 10, 11, 12, you're getting a lot of water. Because our goal is to stop the damage. And so there are several types of medications that we can talk about. And we've talked about a few of them already. So metformin is the one that everybody talks about. We're not going to get into the issues that people talk about for the medications. We'll do that at another time. But metformin is a medication, and what it does, the biggest thing that it does, is it decreases the amount of sugar that your liver produces, and it sensitizes your body to using the insulin that you already have on board. So remember we talked about, right? Remember we talked about the liver? The liver is producing sugar, and so metformin decreases the amount of sugar that your liver produces. And we said that the muscles are supposed to be burning sugar, and metformin helps the muscles to burn the sugar more efficiently. So it's hitting three of the things that we talked about. Two of the three things. Decreasing the liver sugar, and it makes their muscles use sugar more efficiently. Metformin. Next one is what we call the GLP-1 receptor agonist. And this is all the medications that people are talking about that are causing people to lose weight. And they do four things. One, they decrease or they slow food as it moves through your body, which is why people feel fuller longer, which means they don't eat. They feel full. They do some other things in terms of weight as well. But big thing, slows the food as it moves through your body. All right? So you're not putting anything in, right? So we said in, production, and using up, right? So if you're not putting anything in, so guess what the blood sugar does? It goes down. Number two, it decreases the sugar from your liver. So guess what? The blood sugar is lower. Number three, it makes your muscles use the sugar more efficiently, right? So those are the three things. And then it does one additional thing, which is if your body is able to produce insulin, it makes the body produce more insulin, the pancreas, that is. So that's what the GLP-1s do. The SGLT2s are cousins to the GLP-1s, and they are kind of a hybrid. So they make your body produce insulin if it can, and it decreases the sugar from your liver, right? So remember, metformin does the muscle, and it does the liver. The DPP4s, I said I made a mistake there. So the SGLT2 ones, they just put sugar in your kidney, in your liver, in your urine. I'm thinking DPP4s. Okay, so that's why those things like Farxiga and Jardiance, Invokana, Steglatro, right? So all those medications, they take sugar and they put it in the urine. They don't care where it comes from. They're just getting rid of it. Okay, so that's another mechanism. And then, of course, there's insulin. And insulin's primary job when it comes to sugar, in this case, is to take the sugar and put it in the cell. Remember, we talked about the fact that the sugar is floating around the blood, and when it's floating around the blood, the body doesn't have the ability to use it, which is why people feel tired. Well, insulin says, look, I don't care where the sugar is coming from. I don't care whether you ate it, or whether your liver's producing it, or the muscle isn't using it. I don't care where it is, where it's coming from. I'm just going to take it, I'm going to stuff it into the cell. And when we stuff it into the cell, guess what happens to the blood sugar? The blood sugar goes down. So all the medications that are out there, insulin is the only medication that has an infinite ability to lower sugar. There is no limit to how much the insulin can lower sugar. What does that mean? That means then, if someone shows up with an A1C of 14, right? Let me come over here so I can see, I can look in your eyes. Someone shows up with an A1C of 14, of 11, of 12, of 9, of 10. Guess what they're getting? They're likely getting insulin. Because what we're doing is we're taking the fire off of the house. Primary goal, right, is not for you to eat better, not for you to go exercise, not for you to get better sleep. The primary goal is to stop damage right now. We can teach you to eat better. We can teach you to go exercise. We can teach you to go sleep. But right now, we're going to put the fire out. Okay? So when we're looking at medication, right, the goal, the thought process is, number one, what are we trying to do? How much lower do we need to get the blood sugar? And then what are the mechanisms that the medications that we're using can attack to get the blood sugar down? Right? 3 things. It's coming in, it's being produced, and it's being used. And all the medications that we use have some function like that. Now, the one that I talked about, the SGLT2, it will take sugar and put it in the urine. So that's a different mechanism, but basically it's getting rid of it. Okay? All right. So let's get back over here. So medication. So it is a primary way of dealing with sugar. So then the question becomes, what's actually driving the persistent hyperglycemia, and what's the next step in the management? So we've already talked about medication, right? So we're going to take medication off the table for a minute. Let's go and let's look at the others. Well, we say it's coming in. Where's it coming from? It's coming from the food. Now we get to say, hey, what's the diet like? If you remember our guy, he was eating sandwiches and chips. He was snacking at night. You remember that? So where is the sugar coming from? Now we get to tweak and we get to say, okay, now Mr. Jones, now Mrs. Jones, we have a plan to put the fire out. But how do we prevent the blood sugar from rising again? Or how do we begin teaching you how to manage that without medication? And when I put people on medication, one of the first conversations I have with them is the goal is not for you to be on medication. The goal is for you to manage, and we're talking specifically now for type 2 diabetics. Type 1s, we've not yet been able to find a way to manage a type 1 diabetic without insulin. Okay, that is what it is. They are insulin requiring. Type 2s, on the other hand, one of the very first conversations I have with them is how do we, once we get the fire out, once we've lowered the blood sugar, once we've gotten you out of danger, once we've stopped the damage, how do we get you off this medication? And we get you off the medication by looking at those 3 things. Number 1, we said the food is bringing the sugar in. So now we've got to look at the food. How do we manage the food so that we're not putting in that heavy load? Remember the gap? The body can do this, but we're asking it to do this. How do we stop that? How do we narrow that gap? So we look at food. Number 2 is, we said that the liver is using it. Where does the liver get that from? Well, it's getting it from the food. It's getting it from when we're stressed, it produces insulin or produces sugar, right? So managing some of those lifestyle things, right? So getting good rest, managing your stress, right? That affects here. And then the third thing is what? The utilization of sugar. And where did we say that's happening? That's happening in the liver. And so when we talk about lifestyle, those are the things that we're talking about, right? So lifestyle changes. So we've already dealt with the medication. Now let's attack these other things. And this now is the process of saying, okay, now that the fire is out, how do we get in there and how do we make sure some things are happening that gets the house back into functioning mode? But we can't do that part until the house is saved, until the car's not on fire anymore, until we've saved some of your stuff. Make sense? Okay? And that's a very important point. That's a very important point. So when we see a high blood sugar number, right, what concerns us the most? The number itself, fear of complications, or the feeling of losing control? That's a question that people have to answer for themselves. Because people respond differently to different things. Because I think I'm trying to save the house. I'm trying to stop the damage. But they just might be afraid that they're losing control. And so addressing those concerns at the same time that we're preventing damage is very important. So as you are looking at the blood sugar and your doctor's talking to you about managing the blood sugar and talking to you about medication and talking to you about all the other things, in your mind, you have got to understand, well, what is my primary fear? What is the thing I'm most afraid of? Is it the damage that's being done? Is it the fact that I don't seem to understand this whole process? Is it that I'm fearing that I'm losing control? That complications are happening? All of those are valid concerns, and they're all worth considering, because if we don't consider them, then we end up doing things and treating people in ways that are not always conducive for long-term success. Now, why do I say that? Let me come back here. When I see a patient for the very first time, I have two goals. Number one is to help them understand the urgency of stopping damage. Number one. So that's the process. And then number two is to get them to understand that they have the control. We have to stop the damage, and you ultimately, though, have the control. That's why when we talk about unlimited potential. That's kind of like going to your mechanic. And the car is in a bad state, and I'm bad on cars, I've got to say it. And you go to the mechanic, and what will they do? They will help you. Right? They'll change the oil, they'll change the filters, they'll top off the different fluids, they'll rotate the tires, get you some new tires, they'll fix the brakes and so forth. And then they give the car back to you. And getting the car back, it's now your responsibility to take care of the car over the long haul. I've already fixed the major problem. I've already dealt with the fact that the damage was there and we've corrected some of that. But now, what do we do? Now, how do we make sure that things are in a position that over the long haul, we can keep it safe. And this is the lifestyle modification that everybody talks about. This is the getting the sleep. This is the being consistent with your medication. This is the managing the stress. This is the physical activity that utilizes the sugar. This is managing the dietary patterns and the things that you're eating. So not just, hey, I'm going to eat breakfast, lunch, and supper, but what am I eating? All of that now is over the long haul. But the very first thing, y'all, I want you to understand, is the very first thing is to make sure that we stop damage. So when physicians evaluate a case like this, the process is structured. We define the problem, we interpret the physiology, we identify the contributors, and then we determine the next step in therapy. Because diabetes management is not about reacting emotionally to the numbers. It's about understanding the system and adjusting it carefully, and making sure that we're doing all the things that we need to do so that we can be successful over the long haul. That's the plan. That's what happens over the evaluation and the discussion with the patient. How do we narrow the gap from the things that your body's able to do and the demand that is being asked to do? Anytime we can get those to equal, guess what happens? We have the best management of our diabetes. Right? We'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, y'all, and this, you know what? I get excited about this discussion, and this is the discussion that I have some form of with patients that I see in the office. As a matter of fact, I had a component of this discussion with a patient that I've been seeing for years. Because people kind of go through things, right? So there are seasons. And sometimes I've got to remind them what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing. And everybody's not at the same place at the same time. And so our goal is to educate, empower, and encourage. That's why you hear me say that all the time. I educate, I empower, and I encourage. I'm educating people with the podcast, with the shows, with the blogs. All the things that we're doing here is with the intention of education. So that we can change the perspective, so you can help you to understand how your body works, how we can help you to understand the reasons why we do things, and help you to understand that you have the ability, the unlimited potential. So we educate, we empower with the tools that we're providing, right? Instilling the idea that I can make a choice. What are the choices I'm going to make? What are the things that we can do? How do I go about doing that? All the shows that we've done, all the tools that we've learned, the COPE model and the health action plan that we've done, all of those are tools that you get to apply in your life. And then we empower, and then we encourage with this amazing community that you are currently a part of. I love the community. The power of community is unmatched. In fact, I have some communities that I'm now doing some things with in other spaces other than health, because they all, remember we did the domains of health? It all circles and it all affects each other. We educate, we empower, and we encourage, so that you can show up intentionally and consistently for all those events and all those people in your life. That's why we do what we do. Now, if you are interested in continuing to work on yourself, there are some things that we have. If you go to dwainwoodmd.com/brief, BRIEF. I think the last time I did, I put an S on it. It's not, there's no S. dwainwood.com/brief, BRIEF. That is our health nugget that comes out on a weekly basis. Right? So it's not just about diabetes. It's about how do I instill in my life things that set me up for my best possibility of being successful. That's what the brief is. Whether you're diabetic, pre-diabetic, whether you have chronic illnesses, whether you are lonely, whether you have rheumatoid arthritis, whatever, what are some things that I need to begin doing in my life? And they're very simple things that I can implement that will help me to be successful. dwainwoodmd.com/brief, BRIEF. Some of the tools that we're learning, right? So if you're interested in fasting, there's a dwainwoodmd.com/fasting. We'll start our fasting tomorrow. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Now, the foundations episode that we have been doing, and I think I'm going to include this one in there. Don't quote me on that. But right now, there are 3. And if you go to dwainwoodmd.com and you go to Blood Sugar Foundation, dwainwoodmd.com, Blood Sugar Foundation, I'm going to go over there. dwainwood.blood-sugar-foundations. Let's see, blood sugar. I spelled sugar wrong. Blood Sugar Foundations. There it is. Okay, and you can sign up for the resources that go along with those episodes. Now, those episodes that are out there on the internet, they're on YouTube, they're on the channel, but this helps to put them all together so that you can walk through them together. There's some PDFs that go along with it that you can begin looking at. Okay, so dwainwoodmd.com/blood/sugar/foundations. Okay, let me put that up here. We need to find a different name for it, but that's what it is right now. Okay, and then you can download that. And let me go over there so you can see what it looks like. Here it is. Okay. Hey, look at that guy right there. Who do you guys recognize him? Okay. It's called the Starting Trilogy, and it's the first 3 episodes of the foundations that we've been doing over the last several weeks. They're all put together. You sign up for that, and you can download a PDF that goes along with them. Just right here, you put your information in, and then you will get that. Be able to download those episode PDFs that go along with each episode. Allows you to walk through them and be and have some interesting things to discuss as you go through those. Okay, so once again, let me do this. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to put it in the chat. Let's see. I'm going to put it in the chat, and you can just go over there and click on it, because there it is. Okay, here we are. Okay, now that should be there. All right, so let's go ahead, and I do see some community members out there, so let me go back over here, and let's see, where were we? We talked to Dr. Cornelia. Good evening, all. So Lightworks had a question. Can you have a bad month that skews your A1C? And the answer is yes, it can. Remember, the A1C is a marker of what your average blood sugar has been for the last 3 months. So each month is theoretically a third of your grade. So imagine having an exam or a class where you have 3 tests, right? So one of those tests can skew the A1C. Now there are some, the last month is worth more than the others, but basically yes, to answer that question. Okay, so very good question, by the way. And then Lightworks says complicated. Let me see, did I? Complications. Yes, complications are very real. Complications are very real. And the very first thing that we're doing whenever we're dealing with blood sugars is we are working on getting rid of or decreasing complications. You notice that get rid of, there's an interesting point, I guess, to be made there, that a diabetic, we can decrease complications. Let me say it that way. We can decrease complications. Anyone who tells you that they can eliminate complications, not necessarily telling you the whole story. Okay, so we can decrease complications, and our best chance for not having complications is by getting better blood sugars. Okay, awesome. All right, well, y'all, this week we are back in the saddle. We have our fasting that's going to be starting tomorrow, so come out and join us as we go through that, as we get into what we're going to be doing for the rest of the week. We'll do that tomorrow, then Wednesday, and then Thursday we'll have our pop-ups that come through. We'll have our Foundations episode that will come through for this week. On Saturday, we have this week, Video from the Vault, which will be 9 p.m. on Saturday, right here on the channel, 9 p.m. Central. On Sunday morning, we'll have This Week in Review, and then we'll be right back here next week for Dwain Woode, MD Live. Hey, y'all, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Woode with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. We're creating the life we've always wanted. And my goal is that you show up, that you are having the success in your health just like you're having in all the other areas of your life. You don't need superhuman strength. What you need is a strategy you can trust, a plan you can follow, and the support to keep showing up every single time. Thank you for being here. We'll see you as we go through the rest of the week. All right, good night, everybody. Bye-bye.